Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a quick roundup of what's happening around the world in Russia, Ukraine, Great Britain, United States, and I'm also going to be talking about the bridge incident in India, and I'm also going to have an idiot of the day today as well. So first of all, Russia is considering what further steps to take against Britain over Nord Stream attack. So obviously, Russian intelligence have said that the British intelligence was involved in destroying the Nord Stream pipeline attack. And I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. And if you look at all the reasons for every single country, Britain has probably got the most to gain from this. And they have the most to gain because they want to show the British that leaving for Brexit was the best solution. So they cannot have a strong EU. So they do not want to be left behind. So for them to blow up Nord Stream and leave EU to be absolutely destroyed, Britain can finally say, you know what, Brexit, we were right. We were right leaving the EU. Look at how bad the EU is compared to us. We made the right decision. So the British people, or there are some neocons in people in intelligence who cannot stand EU to rise up, and they cannot stand EU to kind of open up that Nord Stream 2 pipeline again and start, building up good relations with Russia. So the best solution for these British to do is to blow up Nord Stream, watch EU burn, and the British suddenly sitting back and say, yeah, you know what? We were right with Brexit. We cannot let these EU mugs to open up that pipeline again and start building up the economy. We cannot have that. They need to carry on buying expensive LNG from the US and let them deindustrialize. So it's good for us, good for the US. So let's do that. So the UK has definitely got the most to gain from this, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did it. So what will Russia do? I mean, obviously, they cannot act militarily because Russia is way too busy with Ukraine, um, and so they cannot act militarily. NATO will get involved, US will get involved, and Russia does not have the capacity to fight all of these fronts at once. Um, if NATO does get involved, um, believe me, United Kingdom would be the first to be a target for Russia, and they're not going to use conventional weapons either. To fight NATO, you will have to use nukes. So UK will probably be the first to be nuked, and this is why, it's very, very important not to get involved in this conflict. I don't understand why Britain cannot stay neutral. It's absolutely disgusting how these neocons are playing with British people's lives. And British people are completely oblivious to what's happening around the world. They're completely, you know, dumbfounded, walking around like nothing's happening. Well, you are close to nuclear annihilation, your economy is crashing, your pound's crashing, your cost of living is going through the roof, yet people are in their pubs drinking and having a good time and laughing. I was walking past a pub yesterday, and there were people drinking and laughing and joking. And then I looked up, and there was a for sale sign on the pub as well. So the pub's obviously going to be shutting down soon. They're looking for buyers. Absolutely disgusting how Britain is like this, to be honest. And, when will the British people wake up? There's huge demonstrations happening in France, in Czech Republic, in Germany, but British people aren't doing anything. And the only protesters you see in England are these climate protesters, and they're always there. They are not here for cost of living or anything like that. These climate guys who are spraying these car showrooms and throwing soup in paintings. They've always been around, these climate guys. This is do not confuse these protesters with actually what's happening around the world. So the main story is Rishi Sunak. He's only been in power for just a few weeks. Already he's looking to increase the taxes, or just when you think that the British people cannot have more taxes on top of their heads. So he's looking to raise taxes and put some more headaches to the British people. If things weren't bad enough, you can see here in this article, mortgage bills will rise by hundreds of pounds. And, it depends on the property you live in London. Certain properties, you know, people have very, very high mortgages. So if you increase your mortgage rates by double or even triple, they're going to have to pay between 400, 500 pounds extra per month, depending how much mortgage you have with the bank. And you got to count with everything else that's happening around UK as well, like the cost of living, the inflation is going through the roof. The cost of goods are going up by 50%, 100%. I went to the supermarket the other day and I checked butter. Butter's gone up by 3 times. And you can look at, you can go to a normal fast food joint. For example, if you go to Burger King, you will see that certain burgers are now £10, and they used to be well around £5, well over a year ago. And things are going, inflation is going through the roof. And one way to hide inflation is to give lower portions. I went to a shop in London called Wasabi, and a couple of years ago, Wasabi used to be my favorite, go-to place to eat. And I used to get katsu chicken curry, and they used to give me two massive pieces of chicken with loads of curry in there. And I used to be proper full after eating that. I couldn't even finish it. And then recently, last year, sometime, they replaced those two massive pieces of chicken into one massive piece of chicken. And then obviously, it used to still fill me up. I wasn't complaining too much. I would still eat all of it. And now, 2 weeks ago, I went to the same wasabi place. And guess what? They cut that massive piece of chicken into half. Now you get a small piece of chicken, just one piece, by the way, with rice and chicken, and they increase the price on top of that. So what you're getting is they're increasing the price. They're also lowering the portions as well to hide the inflation. If you lower the portion by half, technically you're getting half the meal for the same price or higher even. And this is how, businesses and supermarkets, fast food joints are basically getting around the inflation by giving you lower portions. They're hoping people are not going to notice, but I notice these things. And it's absolutely ridiculous. You got the cost of living crisis, you got the high gas and energy bills as well, which are rising for the British people. That's not going to stop. So how much more can British people take? I mean, how much more taxes are you going to rise for British people? And people are forgetting that the reason why we are in this mess is because of Rishi Sunak. He was a chancellor. He was a chancellor for years. And we are in this mess because of Rishi Sunak. We are in this mess because of reckless money printing that he basically did as part of the chancellor, or got the Bank of England to do. And all of this inflation, all this stuff that's happening around the world is mainly because of him. And people forget that. And you also not can't forget that he is also a billionaire. So whatever he does, he doesn't care. He doesn't care what's happening around, the middle classes and the low income classes in UK. As far as he's concerned, he's fine, and his family are fine, and his family are well fed, well warm. He's got a swimming pool in his house, paying £13,000 per month for the bills. He doesn't care. End of the day, whatever he does as a chancellor, it's affecting the everyday people, and this is why, he was a bad choice for a chancellor and even a worse choice for a prime minister, because he doesn't know what everyday people are suffering. He doesn't know how people are living paycheck to paycheck, not knowing whether you want to keep warm or you want to be fed, not knowing whether to keep your children warm or whether to feed your children. He hasn't not got a clue. So Rishi Sunak is basically a British oligarch, and he's put into power by other oligarchs, and he's doing the bidding obviously for all of the oligarchs in UK. And you can see here, the Independent has basically identified some time ago that he's got trusts in the British Virgin Islands and the Cayman Islands. These were created to help manage the tax and business affairs of Sunak's wife, Akshata Murthy. And obviously, her father owns Infosys, which is one of the biggest software companies in the world. And to this day, they are still making money in Russia, and nobody says anything. You might notice the British papers are not saying anything about Rishi or his wife or his tax dealings or her tax dealings because they're not allowed to. He's put a law in place which forbids them to talk anything about this. So all of this stuff I'm bringing up from before. And as you know, his wife basically was a non-domicile, and all she has to do is pay £30,000 a year for non-dom status. But she was saving up to 280 million in tax because her inheritance, which is 750 million or something, given to her father, shares of Infosys, she puts in offshore accounts and she does not have to declare that or pay any taxes on it. So she was saving up to 280 million and she only had to pay 30,000 pounds a year for just to be a non-dom status. So imagine the savings there. So a lot of you might say, hang on a second, she's relinquished her non-dom status. Well, that's not the point, guys. That is not the point. And I'll tell you why. Because Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor of the Exchequer during this time his wife was a non-dom, and he knew exactly about her saving the taxes. He knew exactly about her situation, and he was doing everything he can to protect that, protect his own interest, protect his wife's interest all these years. So how can you trust someone that did that? So here you have somebody squeezing every penny out of working class and poor people, 100% of their earnings, whilst on the other hand saving money for his wife. So the point is, it doesn't matter whether she relinquished it or not. The fact is, she was doing that under his watch. That's the problem. So you can see here other things that his wife did. Rishi Sunak's wealthy wife claimed up to £100,000 from furlough to pay staff. So can you see the dodginess that's going on here in the family? So this furlough money is not the government's money, it's not Rishi Sunak's money, it's our money paid by British taxpayers. And we're now paying interest on it. Our taxes are gonna go up because of it. Inflation's gone up. All of this furlough stuff is the reason why we are in this mess. 600 billion Rishi Sunak spent during the furlough scheme. 600 billion. Imagine how much that is in monetary terms and how much not only we have to pay back, but our children. I mean, the system is so broken. Imagine kids coming out of university with 50, 60, 70,000, 100,000 pounds in debt. How is that giving them a start in life? How are they supposed to make a start in life? How are they supposed to, live a good life when they're that much in debt? This is how much kids are coming out of university in debt. And now, because of all of these furlough schemes and money printing, kids are now more in debt than ever. So you can see, you'll see that the British papers are not going to mention anything about this anymore. They did when he was Chancellor because they can get away with it, but they're not going to do it now. But they'll only do it when the economy tanks. When the pound falls, economy tanks, that's when they'll start turning against him. They don't care about if the British public have to pay more tax or these poor and middle class people uh, are really suffering. They don't care about that. If you remember Liz Truss, the only reason they kicked her out is because the pound fell. And the bank said, you know what, get rid of her. And they got rid of her a week later. Only because of the pound fell. Not because she was making working class people's lives a misery, poor people's lives a misery. Nothing about that. It's when the banks feel that they lost money because of Liz Truss, that's when she had to go. And this is why this country is being run by oligarchs. They don't care about ordinary people, poor people, middle class people. They will squeeze every single penny out of you. I mean, one of my neighbors, I bumped into him the other day, and he seemed like he was in a real sweat, and he was, he was almost in tears. I said, "What's wrong? What's happened?" He said, "Oh, I went to holiday and I just got back." And I said, "Yeah, so what's wrong?" And he said, I got this letter that just came through my door. Apparently, I got a car ticket for driving in the bus lane, but because I was on holiday, I couldn't pay it back, and now it's gone to court. And this bus lane ticket went from £80 to like £160 or something, and he missed the letter, and now it's been taken to court, and now he has to pay about £1,000 in court fees, and something ridiculous amount, just because he drove into the bus lane and he didn't get the letter, or didn't find the letter. Can you see how people in UK just been squeezed from every last penny they have, from private enterprises, from the government, from the council? They'll find a way to squeeze whatever they can. And the motorists in UK, motorists are easy targets. If you have a car, you are an easy target. They've opened up all these congestion charge things. They've expanded it. They've expanded the hours as well. And they've put cameras everywhere. So if you forget to pay that day, you get a ticket the next day, £100. If you don't pay in 14 days, it doubles to £200. It's absolutely unbelievable. And now, they've added all these new rules that if you drive old cars, and you have to pay a fine for emissions charge or something like that. So you gotta find a way to sell your old car and buy a new one. So all of these people that drive old cars, they are poor or they're old. They can't afford a new car. So you expect them to sell their car and buy a brand new one. Maybe they can't afford it. And also nowadays, there's cameras everywhere, CCTV cameras everywhere. There's more cameras in London than there is in Beijing, and that's a fact. You drive out a place, you make a mistake on the road, that's it, you get a ticket. And you're not gonna get a ticket straight away. You get a ticket like a week later or 2 weeks later. If you don't pay, it gets escalated, it doubles. And if you don't pay again, it doubles and triples, and then you get sent to court, and you lose 3 points in your license if you're speeding or going through a red light or something accidentally, or something else. They'll find some way to squeeze money out of you. And the motorists have been easy targets for years. They have been squeezing money out of them for years. So you see, you can see stories such as BP and Shell making profits. Um, you know, Shell and BP have recently come out with profits of 8 billion in the last few months. 8 billion they've made. And all of that money is going to go to the shareholders. None of that money is going to be going into public services or the British government, or to help us in any way. It's all going to go into the pockets of shareholders. And guess what these shareholders are going to do? They're going to open up offshore accounts, put their money there, where it can't be traced, can't be taxed. And that's what rich people do. Rich people in UK are not that stupid to pay taxes here. Every single rich person in UK, if you've got savings of over 500,000, you will put them in an offshore account where it's safe, where the government can't tax you, and that's it. You're living a good life without paying any tax. So all of these stories about trickle down economy, it never works. It never works. Trickle down economy is such a sham. It's just a way of making money for the rich and squeezing every single penny out of the poor. And now Rishi Sunak is increasing his taxes on the poor. I mean, talk about squeezing more money out of the poor and middle class. Like, people are not suffering as they are. Rishi Sunak is still going through a honeymoon period, but this honeymoon period will soon end, trust me. I mean, today I had to switch my heating on for the first time because it's starting to get very cold. I've been avoiding putting the heating on for the past, obviously 6 months or so, but today's the first time I put my heating on, because the house is really cold, and I can imagine it's going to get worse over the next few weeks and few months, and it's going to get worse for people in Europe, and it's going to get worse for people in Ukraine. A real pain is starting to come very soon. So I'm also going to be talking about the US right now. The US has recently announced a GDP growth in quarter three of 2.4%. But I want to kind of talk about this because there's a lot of articles, and when you dig in deeper into what's happening, you got to understand that these figures are not what they say they are. And you can see here, third quarter GDP is likely to be elevated by a narrowing gap between exports and imports, but that's because the United States is importing fewer goods as demand dries up. If you lift the hood up and examine the numbers, said Andrew Patterson, a senior economist at Vanguard, you'll see that the American consumer and businesses are actually spending less, and that's a bad sign. And I want to kind of talk about this Financial Times report as well. And this Financial Times, it says US exports record oil volumes as fuel tensions build. And this is the reason why US has got higher exports than imports. They are exporting record number of oil and gas to the European market. And you can see US ships energy to the world, which means the EU. And this has been going up and up. And recently, 2022, you can see the huge increase compared to 2020. And if you go further down, you'll see that the US gas fuel prices at the pump is still high. So the US consumer still has to pay high fuel prices. This is because these companies are selling most of their oil and gas abroad to Europe and not selling enough to the US market, to the US consumer. So they are all there to make a profit. They are all there to make as much money as they can from the Europeans. And the Europeans have recently complained, especially Macron and the ministers in Germany as well. They're saying that US is basically scamming them, selling them for 4 times as much as they sell at home. And this is right. I mean, US can demand whatever they want because they know the EU is desperate. They know they can sell it at whatever price they want, and the EU will buy it. And this is the problem you have really. The EU are basically destroying their own economy. They are there as idiots to buy whatever the US throws at them because they know they have no other choice. So the US can demand whatever the price they want, and EU will buy it as lapdogs. And this is bad for the EU. The EU's economy is going to suffer, but in terms of exports, the US is doing well. And again, you got to look at the exports, and exports, the US is doing well. The US dollar is also very strong compared to the EU, so the EU will obviously have to pay more because of the weak EU and the strong dollar. And in terms of the imports, the US is buying less because they have less money. The inflation is going through the roof in United States. The taxes have gone up as well. So, you know, people are saying don't be fooled by these GDP figures. And you have Biden coming out and saying, oh, we have turned it around. We have GDP figures of 2.4%. We have turned a corner. This shows that our policies are working. It's all PR, guys. Don't be fooled by that PR. Don't be fooled by these GDP numbers. And you can see from this graph, monthly prices for natural gas in the United States and Europe from January 2014 to August 2022. And you can see the black line is Europe and the blue line is US. And the gas prices in US is fairly constant. It has gone up a little bit. But look at the EU, it has literally shot up and it's keep on shooting up. Even though it's August 2022, a few months ago, or just over a month, is still shooting up. So this is what US is selling to to the Europeans, and obviously the Europeans are not very happy, and they're saying US fumes as US Norway energy profits put solidarity to the test. And everybody's seen the shares of Shell, ExxonMobil, BP, all of these huge gas companies making huge profits and taking full advantage of the geopolitics events around the world. And the EU, being puppets as they are just taking it and taking it without really complaining publicly. Privately, maybe they are complaining. You've seen Macron basically whispering, "Oh, we're not happy about this, we're not happy about that." The Germans are whispering about it, but they're not going to make a real public spat about it because they know they are under the thumb of the US. Finally, I want to kind of cover this story as well. The US job market, again, it looks very good. Payrolls increased by 263,000, unemployment rate nosedives to 3.5% in September. But what they're not telling you is inflation is going through the roof, the cost of living is going through the roof, and people are having to do 2 or 3 jobs, and that's a problem because they don't mention people, they only mention payrolls. Can you see payrolls increased by 263,000? And this is because people are having 2, 3 jobs, and this is why payrolls will increase. But this doesn't mention anything about people, unemployment rates in terms of people. It only mentions unemployment rates in terms of payrolls. So you got to read between the line, guys. So this is all BS. These unemployment figures are all BS because they're only looking at payrolls. They're not looking at per person. So again, you got to look at the real stories here. So let me tell you something else. There's a real storm brewing at the moment. Countries all over the world are starting to dump the dollar, and Japan has crazily been dumping the dollar, so has Korea. And everybody knows China and Russia have been dumping the dollar for years, and a lot of the other countries as well, wherever they can. Egypt has recently. And where do you think all of this dollar will end up? Of course, it's going to end up back in the United States, and it's going to cause more inflation because you have all of this spare dollars flying around the economy. This is going to be bad for the United States, and these countries have to dump the dollar to save their own currency. And it's the only way, with the strong US currency as it is, you have to save your own currency by dumping the dollar. And if you don't, then your currency is at risk. Inflation will shoot up. The cost of goods will shoot up because you have to obviously import oil and gas and other commodities. So a lot of countries have been dumping the dollar recently, and this has not been reported. So give it another 2 or 3 months, and you'll see these dollars being circulated around the US. Inflation is going to start shooting up again. The Federal Reserve is going to start increasing the interest rates again, and it's just going to be a vicious cycle. So, talking about Japan, a lot of people have taken their focus off Japan. Everyone's focused on Germany, on Europe, on Britain. People are saying those countries are at great risk of collapsing. But nobody's really talking about Japan. Japan is at a really precarious state at the moment, and I think the Japan economy is very, very risky, and that could be the first collapse for many reasons. So during October, you can see Japan government spent 43 billion to bolster its yen in October. And Japan has been very naughty lately. It's been very stupid, to be honest. And Japan went along with the West and introduced all of the sanctions against Russia. And it's pretty much shot its own foot because what that meant is they couldn't buy any more energy from Russia. Russia kicked Japan out of lots of joint uh, fields, oil and gas fields that Japan had investments in. So Russia pretty much kicked Japan out of them. So Japan was literally scrambling around trying to find energies from other places. And in the end, they had to buy very expensive LNG from United States and other expensive places as well. So Japan has pretty much shot itself in the foot by placing all of these sanctions on Russia, and Japan's economy has been going down in free fall. So Japan, UK, Europe are probably going to be going down very fast very soon. The Japanese yen has been going down in free fall as well. In the forex market, it's been shooting down absolutely crazy against the US dollar. And what this means is Japan is mainly an import country. They import a lot of energy from the US, gas, and oil as well. They are dependent on gas, they are dependent on oil because Japan is not really a country where they have lots of natural resources, so they are very dependent on energy. They have a very high manufacturing index, so they manufacture a lot of goods in Japan. So all of that needs energy, all of that needs gas and oil. So they have to obviously pay for that in US dollars, and for the yen to be falling very, very high, they pay extra amounts because of that. And not only that, they're fighting with European countries as well for that kind of those kind of resources as well. So that brings up the price even higher. So Japan is in a very bad state at the moment, and I just don't know what's going on with Japan. It seems to be run by a bunch of puppets. I mean, these puppets do not care if they destroy the Japanese economy. So those of you who don't know what the Plaza Accord is, there's a very good article here, how the Plaza Accord helped US destroy the Japanese economy. And back then in the 1980s, Japan was very technologically savvy. They had a very good industrial base. They were exporting cars all over the world. They're exporting games, consoles, and technology and TVs. And Japan was a very much a technological hub. So what the US did at the time, they signed this deal with Japan, and here it is. So the US signed the Plaza Accord in 1985 with the primary purpose of strengthening Japanese yen such that Japanese exports would no longer be competitive in the global market. In general, economies are primarily driven by export want their currency to be weaker, not stronger. So the prices of goods are more competitive in the global market, which is right. And I can't believe Japan was stupid enough to sign this accord. Because you can see here, what happened after is just history. The Japanese economy just tanked, an asset bubble popped, and the standing in global affairs has never recovered. And Japan is doing it again. They are completely destroying their own economy just to keep their masters happy in the US. And absolutely unbelievable how these Japanese leaders think. And it goes to show, Japan is just being run by puppet. These puppets are put in place not to help the Japanese people, but to help the U.S. economy and the U.S. Uh, oligarchs that are running the country, the neocons and the globalists and things like that. So absolutely puppet state with puppet governments. I just hope one of these days Japan will be able to, have some pride and start standing up for themselves and say no to the USA, kick out the US troops and having some sovereignty for a change. So everybody knows that China has been trying to dump the US treasuries now for a month. They are accelerating this as well. They are going into new markets. For example, they do not have to buy oil and gas anymore in US dollars. They're buying it straight from Russia and buying it in their own currency or in ruble. So because of that, they do not need to keep as much US money in central banks because they do not need that dollar to buy um, gas and oil in dollars like they did before. So now they directly get it from Russia. And they have another market as well, which is Iran. They also buy it from Venezuela as well. And these countries, they do not have to buy it in dollars. They can buy it in their own currency. And imagine this, the three of the most sanctioned countries in the world have the most oil and gas reserves. And we're talking about Russia, talking about Iran, we're talking about Venezuela. And can you imagine if these three countries join the BRICS and suddenly the BRICS, all the countries work out a reserve currency, a BRICS reserve currency, the dollar would be dead. Nobody's gonna trade in the dollar anymore if this ever happens. And I think they're only waiting for Saudi Arabia to join the BRICS. And I think once the Saudi Arabians join the BRICS and they work out their own reserve currency, which all of the BRICS nation would use, then I do not see the dollar lasting a year, and the BRICS countries' combined GDP is much higher than the G7. So the G7 is pretty much useless. You have countries in there like Canada and Italy. I mean, come on, how are you going to compare the G7 with the BRICS? We have the biggest, most populous nations, the nations with the highest GDP, up and coming, powerful countries. We're talking about like Brazil, Saudi Arabia, and countries like Russia. And the West is done for. It's pretty much done for if that BRICS reserve currency happens. So you see that China is dumping US treasuries because they need it less and less. Also, don't forget, China is you know, buying more and more agricultural goods and products from Russia as well. And used to be USA as their main source of agricultural products, but now they're getting a lot of the stuff from Russia. And China's agricultural output has also increased this year as well. And China is also finding new oil fields and gas fields, so they are pretty much self-sufficient in many ways. So they will need less and less US dollars, and this is why they are dumping a lot of the dollars that they do not need or do not want. There's other countries as well dumping dollars as well. US's main allies, we're talking about Israel, and you know it's happening all over the world. A lot of South American companies are dumping the dollars. It's happening more and more around the world, and all of these dollars that they're dumping, they're just going to end up back in the US. It's going to bring up inflation. The Fed's going to open up the interest rates even more, make it even higher, and people's lives will be more harder, and the cost of living is going to go up even more. It's just going to be a vicious cycle. And the day when the US dollar is not a world reserve currency anymore, I'm talking about if there is ever a BRICS reserve currency and it overtakes the US dollar, then the dollar is going to be in serious trouble and you're going to be looking at hyperinflation then. Because imagine all of those dollars that they have printed all over the world, and all of these countries start dumping the dollar. All of these dollars will end up back in the US, and they will have no choice. It's just going to, there's going to be hyperinflation. And there have been some very famous economists all over the world and also in the United States as well, saying that if there was ever another reserve currency overtakes the dollar, then the US will have hyperinflation. People will not be able to afford anything. There's going to be riots in the streets. It's going to be civil wars. It's going to be absolute mayhem. So those are the things still to come. We're still a long way from that from happening. Obviously, there's steps that need to be taken, like Saudi Arabia needs to join the BRICS. Saudi Arabia needs to agree to sell its oil in other currencies or in the BRICS currency. So there's a lot of steps that need to be taken. And the United States is not going to sit there and allow all this happen. They will make sure they take steps as well to make sure this does not happen, whether they do regime change, whether they start a war, whether they do a color revolution, or they go ahead and invade like they did in Iraq. So, there's a lot of things the US can still do to make sure this doesn't happen. And you can guarantee that they will fight to protect the dollar and they will do whatever it takes to protect the dollar. Finally, we have the idiot of the day, and the idiot of the day is Matt Hancock. So Matt Hancock has recently signed up for a reality TV show in UK called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. So this show, who those of you who don't know this show, is basically you are sent to a jungle and you have to eat insects and you have to do all of these tasks where you can be sitting on a box and they throw spiders at you and insects at you, and if you shout out, "I'm a celebrity, get me out of here," they basically let you out the box. Otherwise, you have to sit in there and take all of these punishments, basically. And people vote in to who they want to be punished. And also, a lot of celebrities go there every year. George Galloway was actually there one of these days. I think George Galloway was there. I can't think, or was it Big Brother? I can't remember. But a lot of celebrities go in there. So Matt Hancock has recently signed up for it, and guess what? He got suspended as a Tory MP for joining. So again, he's the idiot of the day. And those of you who don't know who Matt Hancock is, Matt Hancock was caught cheating on his wife by camera, and somebody released the footage, and he got, basically he got kicked out of. Got kicked out by Boris Johnson, and he's been kind of in the back benches. He is famous for lying in COVID. He was obviously the health minister or something. And here he was telling people to lock down and not see their loved ones, while behind the scenes he was having an affair, and this was shown on camera and got released everywhere. So this is why he's the idiot of the day. And that's all for me from today, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Also, don't forget you can support my channel on locals or Patreons. The links are in the description. I need 18 more people on my locals for me to do this full time. I'm going to have to leave my job in a couple of months, so haven't decided whether to do this full time or to find another job or two. And also, you're welcome to kind of like, share, subscribe, help with the algorithm as well. That'll be really appreciated. So without further ado, I'm going to go now and I'll see you soon, guys.